Hey guys, welcome back. Again, we will get started with a video that is pretty viral. You might have heard of him, Robert Greene. Let me get started and play this one.
Facing this incredible global disease, which is way too much information inundating us. I don't think there's ever been a situation like that in the history of mankind, and it doesn't play well with our psychology. And power in the world today comes from knowing what to ignore, what to say no to, what not to let into your brain, so that you can have space in that brain of yours for actual things that are really important. So the ability to say, I don't need to know this. I don't need to read that website. I don't need to know about this celebrity's personal, affairs, et cetera, is a critical skill.
Absolutely. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's information overload. If you think a century ago, if you wanted to learn a new topic or subject, it was difficult. You had to go out of your way to get into those circles, out of your way to go to the library, to look at old scrolls, if we go back centuries ago. Today, it's less what you have to say yes to from the information side and more what you have to say no to. There's so much information out there. And I think knowing just who to follow, where to find sort of your information from, how to build your information diet is really, really important in 2026.
Oh, absolutely. And that's exactly it. It's not just what information you should be ignoring, but the information that you should actually be looking for and making sure that your information diet is clean. So guys, welcome to the show, Alia and Co. I am your host, Alia Kizilbash. And over here, we talk about complex things and we break them down. So today's subject is context and more along the lines of storytelling, because there is so much information out there. How do you build a profile of a certain topic in your mind and make sure that you're hitting all the necessary and important places that you need to be hitting in order for you to be able to develop the correct or the most accurate profile that you can? So today we have a really cool guest with us. We have Landon Campbell. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. My name is Landon. I am an investor at Drive Capital. We're one of the largest venture firms in America. So I focus every day, all my energy in supporting, partnering, and investing in the next generation of startups. On the side, I write the largest newsletter covering Chicago, where I share insights, facts, conversations that I've had that are happening in our city that I'm really excited to write about. Born and raised in the Bay Area. I've been in Chicago now this is going to be my 10th year in Chicago, a full decade, which is crazy to think about. I'm just trying to, leave every day better than I came into it. Help people where I can, help people learn about new topics, connect to new people. That's my life's mission right now.
Interesting. Well, the funny thing is that you do a lot of cool stuff here for Chicago, investing in Chicago-based companies, founders, but then also writing about. And I think that, that's not so much of a side thing. That's a really important thing that you're doing because, with Landon's Loop, which is your newsletter, it's done very uniquely in the sense that you're really covering all of the different layers to a very complex topic.
Thank you.
And, I really enjoy that. But I know it is centralized a lot around the Chicago scene. Dude, you're from California.
I am, yes. I always say born in Cali, but built in Chicago. So, yeah.
I agree. And as someone who grew up in New York, I was born and raised there. I've been living here for a long time, and I agree with you. I think there's something to be had that we make our own home around. In Chicago, there's like a specific energy.
For the past 3.5 years investing full time, I've met with thousands of founders, ecosystem leaders, operators, builders, and there came a day I just felt selfish kind of keeping all those insights to myself. Like I'd leave a conversation and be like, wow, I didn't know Chicago has the most amount of nuclear in the country. Or, we were the birthplace of the mobile phone or the first paper on neural networks. I would just hear of these cool facts about our city, about our state, about our region. And I just was antsy. I needed to get that information out. So it's been such a joy being able to write that, publish my newsletter every week, and it's really helped a lot of people navigate the city a little better.
I love that. But here's the true test of whether you're a Chicagoan or not.
Okay.
Are you a Bears fan?
Obviously.
Oh.
Yes.
All right.
I had an opportunity to watch the big, I don't know when this is going to be posted, but the first playoff win of this circuit, and with my friends. It was remarkable. I mean, I'd say, so my first year in Chicago was the year that the Cubs won the World Series. I'd say this is probably the closest thing since, just walking around after the game and every horn was honking and just seeing people so alive and happy. And we need more of that energy in this city.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not a big sports person. I feel like I did notice an uptick in excitement this year.
Of course.
So of course I had to go into ChatGPT and ask it, what was going? First of all, why do Bears fans dislike the Packers so much? And I didn't know, so I was like, "Where are the Packers from?" And it said Wisconsin, and I'm like, "Aha, makes sense."
Yes, there's so much history there. I mean, the Bears had not won a playoff game against the Packers since, I think, before Pearl Harbor is what I was reading about. So this game was so important. Just the fact that like they were able to come back from an 18-point deficit. I mean, that's the energy that I want in our tech ecosystem. I want in every landscape of the city. We need to win.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of camaraderie here in Chicago.
Of course, yes.
So I do want to get into it. So your newsletter, I'd love for you, in your own words, to explain what you're doing with it.
Yeah, every week I share a newsletter that takes about 5 minutes to read for my viewers, covering Chicago. So I share interviews with well-known executives and founders in our city. I share what's happening that week in Chicago from an events perspective, and also insights, breaking news on what's happening in our tech landscape. So I'll write a lot about data centers coming to the city. I'll write about startup trends in the city of Chicago. And then most recently, as of last year, I started to share a lot of my thoughts on the political landscape as well, because it's very connected. We now live in a time where we're having to sadly see a software tax grow in the city of Chicago. We almost had a head tax. We were going to be charging employees, extra money for the size of their company. I mean, that detracts the workforce. That is not a good indicator. So I really felt that I needed to share my thoughts on that. Thankfully, the head tax did not pass, and I had a small part to play in it, though, just making sure that people know about what's happening in the city.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that while most people might think that the demographic of people that you are targeting with your newsletter are mainly techies or founders or people that know about AI, but to be honest, as I did a super duper duper deep dive into it, I realized that it's so important for us, for anyone actually, as a layman, to understand the scope of how complex it is to build a business. Even with buildings that are going infrastructure, just how AI is so kind of like, it's not just a magical thing, right? It's not,
Totally.
it's not a miracle. It's like kind of like a machine as you describe it.
I'd also add that technology, business, and now AI impacts every citizen. You don't have to be a practitioner. You don't have to be working in the industry, investing in the industry as I am. It's connected to jobs. It's connected to how we learn and know about new information. It's connected to the growth that the city will see in the coming years. So I think it's important. I think it's very important to share those insights with the general public so they know where Chicago's going. And at the same time, right before I launched my newsletter, I noticed that there was just so much pessimism in a lot of the press on Chicago. We're in no way a perfect city. Like, I don't claim to see Chicago as a perfect city, but again, there's a lot of cool shit happening here. We got to talk about it. We have to talk about our winners. We have to talk about our companies that are revolutionizing these different industries. We have to talk about where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like understand where we came from historically.
Yes.
I think there's a lot to that too. So as you're developing this newsletter, let's time machine back to the day before you started, right?
Yeah.
There is this aspect of, like you mentioned, pessimism, right? In some ways, like there's a fear around things that we don't know, and obviously that's an emotion that is attached to it. Do you think that you noticed outside of the pessimism, and if you kind of get more granular with it, like what do you think the reason is why people are so pessimistic or fearful or frustrated? Do you think it's like a lack of knowledge thing?
Well, I think on one side, these are digital products. Like, these are not things that people can touch and, hold in their hands. So at times I think like there's a disconnect there. Like they want to pay for and contribute dollars towards things like, actual physical objects that they think are going to impact their lives. So it could be a little, difficult to see like the sort of future that we can be, with these digital products. That's number one. And number two, I think that we should be leaning into this excitement for sure. Like, we're not always going to have the answers of like what these industries can bring us. from a jobs perspective, new business activity. But I'm just curious. I'm a very curious person. And like, I know that I've helped build a community of also like-minded, intellectually curious people in this city. And I just want to make sure that they were in the driver's seat. Fun fact, the first name of my newsletter was The Driver's Seat. Like just little things I wanted people to just know that was happening in the city of Chicago, so that they could have their own conversations. They could follow up and read their own articles after. But I just want to make sure we're talking about the right things in this city.
Right. And it's funny because before this, actually, we had a conversation about kind of the beginnings of where this came into being. I think with you isn't just, being in the Chicago ecosystem. I mean, you were storytelling in some ways. And I'm going to define storytelling in the way that you're presenting and at the same time allowing for people, like you mentioned, to go and do their own research as well, right? But, you were in high school. What were you doing? You told me.
Yeah, I was a theater kid in high school.
There you go.
So yeah, that's an industry I've spent a lot of my time in. And frankly, I still feel like, I still have a lot of those skills that I'm able to use today. I was a stage director, so being able to like kind of see a complex vision, a script that's maybe too wordy and, you don't know the end of it yet, but be able to like kind of bring a lot of those themes to your actors. That directing is something that I do a lot today with the founders that I work with, where like you don't want to always give someone the answer. You got to build the environment around them to sort of figure it out. So I spent a lot of my time in high school directing, acting, writing plays. And today, it's very similar. I'm public speaking, I'm helping to inspire, and overall just kind of helping turn these visions into like actual actionable things that we can take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. And I think to your point, directing, but then also in some ways, like in venture, you're investing in companies, there is some aspect of curating kind of some sort of environment, or you're basically kind of helping them get the framework of, mastery, a roadmap. It's something that hasn't been built before. Nobody really has a roadmap, but you're providing an environment to some degree. So tell us about that, what the relation between your aspect of storytelling, how you define it, and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, we're investing in a wide array of different themes, everything from AI to stable coins, like many different industries. And yes, to your point, very well said, like the founders that are building today in 2026, like they're building for the first time in 2026. So even if you want to look back at like, all the lessons, like, yes, there's an argument to be made that like, this is a new thing, you got to figure it out. But I spend a lot of my time working with early stage companies. And I will say like a lot of the mistakes that founders make that I help them work through, like that, and during that first year especially, there are many playbooks that have been written for how to be successful, or at least sort of lower your probability of failure in that first year. I think building a company in person with your team is very, very important, just because there's so much, serendipitous action that could happen in the same room and ideas are able to flow. I think that's important. I'd say like prioritizing distribution from day one needs to be a priority for sure. Like, how do you want to be known in the marketplace? How do you want people to think about you when they think about your company? Like, how are you going to get your first 100 users? How are you going to build a community? Like now, especially because the barrier of entry to build a company has been drastically lowered. Like you could launch an app in hours now.
Yeah.
Using Claude, using a lot of these Lovable, using a lot of these tools. You need to think about distribution. And I think that, yeah, there are many case studies of companies that have won because they were able to think differently about distribution.
Right. And what's interesting is that a lot of times people think that there's the playbook or the roadmap. There's just only one way of being successful, But in some ways I see, and I'd like for you to explain what decentralization is.
Yeah.
And then I want, in very layman terms, because let's be honest, people, there are a lot of things, and especially as a founder, lots of other founders that have come in that might be first-time founders, or anyone that has an idea that wants to even say that, it's so glamorous to be a founder. No. Okay, but you can be one too, right?
Yes.
So explain let's explain what it is at a third grade level.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into what you're doing, as I see that there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I were to explain it to a third grader, I'd say, you have sort of centralized ecosystems, or think about the central bank. Like there is something in the middle that other nodes are sort of feeding into. For decentralization, like you have nodes that are like there's no central piece. Like you have nodes that are just kind of spread around a map. They're all working together. They're all sharing insights and lessons. They're helping each other. They're investing in each other. They're building together. Like that's my philosophy for community building. It needs to be decentralized in a way. And I do think I've been doing that for a long time. Like I love open sourcing ideas. Like I had a podcast in the past where I was sharing top interviews from influential business leaders. I had like Steve Wozniak on, Ev Williams. Yeah, it was a great interview. We got to get him on this show. And even back then, it was like, hey, like I'm going to have a 30-minute conversation with a billionaire and share it to my community. But it's up to you, like what you want to do afterwards. Like you can go out afterwards and, deep dive on, information that he was sharing, or you can share it with a friend, or you could reach out to him directly if you want to. Like I really believe like put out the information and let people kind of decide what they want to do with it. And that's really the same theme with the newsletter today. Like my newsletter is not the size of a novel. It's a quick 5-minute read. Really
Matching the attention span of everyone around.
Which we need to, which is even less than 5 minutes, if we're being honest.
Let's just be honest.
But I've earned the trust. I've earned the trust to, be able to have the 5 minutes.
Substack is like a big thing now. People kind of going back to this idea of attention focus on one thing.
Yes.
In some ways, which is actually a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that, I'm a big believer in put out the information for the community. Don't look for anything in return. Just help people out and it will be returned.
Yeah. And so, okay, for me, digesting what you're seeing and looking at kind of like the overarching theme between the newsletter and decentralization, even with your podcast or whatnot. I mean, things are complex.
Yes.
Things need customization. They need little kind of, it's not black and white, right? Like, there are gray areas where you need to unpack them, right? So one centralized source is never going to be the complete answer.
Yes.
So, even the way that you were talking about the podcast is being able to research, kind of, and look into reaching out to the guest or researching the history or finding different things that are kind of in alignment that satisfy your curiosity, because everybody's curiosity is very different as well. Essentially, I mean, I see a theme with that because you, even in your newsletter, will give so many different context points, which is such an interesting overarching theme. So guys, I'm going to ask you, what is decentralization?
I love that question though. And I think that like similar to like when you're building a startup though, like you want quick feedback loops. So I'm very transparent with my audience. Like what do you want to hear more of? Or like if I notice like open rates are higher, 1 week for a topic on TIF funding in the city of Chicago, like, okay, maybe we need to do another dive on that. People are really finding it interesting. So yes, like any builder, like you can put out the information, but you need to have those quick feedback loops. You need to be able to listen to your audience and see what they want.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And especially around kind of like these very abstract topics, and I'm going to do a little exercise with you, and it kind of based off of, I don't know if you've read Sapiens before.
I haven't. I'm familiar with the book.
That's a good one. It's a good one. So there's an example that the author gives about the bank system, right? So hypothetically, let's say the bank has $1 million, right? Actual $1 million in the bank. A guy comes in for a loan. He wants $1 million to build a bakery. He gets the loan. He goes and he builds the bakery. He sees that business is doing well, but let me just ask you, how much money is in the bank?
From the bakery originally?
Well, just originally. We started with $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so now he goes in and he's like, business is doing well.
Yep.
I think I'm going to open another bakery.
Yep.
And put them together, but I need some money for that. So let me go back to
the bank,
yep. Right? And let me get another $1 million or whatnot. So the thing is though, how much is still in the bank? If it's just, nobody else is invested, nobody else is, there's $1 million still left in the bank. Even if somebody were to come and ask for money, the bank will tell the story that there is $1 million. There's, we can loan you another $1 million, but there's only $1 million in the bank.
Yep.
So essentially, this cycle is a story that I think that we tell ourselves, right? So the idea that entities is a story, right? The idea of money in your bank account is really a story, right? Like, there's so many things. Politics in itself, rules, is a story. we just all choose to believe in that story. So the thing is, though, these things that are invisible, right? You do a really great job of explaining in your newsletter. So tell us what you think about, like, these invisible topics that nobody really understands.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago is, the third largest city in the US. Like, that is a very large company. Like, there are many different moving pieces that have to go right in order for Chicago to be in the best place possible. And I think a lot of people just assume that, like, things have to work or a certain way, or like, they're going to continue working as well. And I think it's important to really, share that insight, like kind of uncover in many different ways. Like, not only do we have this new billion-dollar company, but like, what was their path to get there in Chicago? Like, how were they successful? Like, what mistakes did they make early? Like, I want to share those insights so like we can inspire the next generation of founders to know that, like, okay, I can also build a billion-dollar business. And the path is going to be rocky to get there, but like it can happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. But even more adding on to your point, like, the invisible topic of why am I getting paid less right now? Like, what happened in politics that is affecting now these companies that are opening.
Yes, yeah. And I've also noticed, I mean, like, that's, the proverbial rabbit hole. Like, you can always sort of ask, okay, and why to something. So like, to your point, like, if you notice that, like, your company is sort of, making layoffs. Okay, like, why? Like, is it the business climate? Okay, why? Like, who were the elected officials that had that decision? Okay, why? Like, you can continue to ask why. So I really try and like get that apart or break those pieces apart in my newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Where are you getting your information from?
All over. But I also think this is a very important, well-connected point to the video that we watched at the beginning of the show. Like, I have a really good information diet. Like, I know my sources. I know where I'm getting my facts from. And because there are so many distractions online, like, it's a kind of a bundle of like a few other podcasts. It's conversations that I have with folks in person. It could be research papers, coming from the University of Chicago or Northwestern. It can be, maybe news stations that I'm staying close to date with, or books that I read on the city. I have like this sort of bucket of different sources of information that I then distill for my audience. They're getting Landon's loop, like they're getting my opinion, my thoughts, my feedback on a few different sources.
Mm-hmm. I will say, and we had Tim Hulskamp on here.
Yeah, I love Tim.
Yeah. And he does a great job with 1440 Media in the sense that, he highlights certain topics, but then each person has their own kind of customized opinion on whatever, right? And so, how to point to the right information, the right places to find it for your own particular vantage point or viewpoint. I would say that bias is something very difficult to quantify in some ways nowadays because everything is subjective. Even the way that these totals are built are very subjective. I mean, people, like, unfortunately, a lot of individuals that maybe not be in tech and just trust corporations to go in and, they just throw in their data in there over and over again, don't even realize that that's a fallible human being that went and programmed that. So, I'd love to hear what you think in terms of where you think people can find authentic sources.
Yeah, I really do think that people trust people. We're moving to a sort of society where, like, being authentic, being able to share your story is what's really going to help build trust. It always starts with trust. When I started, I had one subscriber, my mom, and, I had to really sort of build that trust over time to be consistent with the content I'm putting out, the information I'm putting out. So if people wanted to go fact check, they could see that, like, okay, yeah, he's telling the truth. And I think the more trust you're able to build, the more notoriety you're able to build. So that's why people, look forward to my newsletter every Monday, because they know that, they're getting my thoughts on things that, like, are the truth.
Mm-hmm. But you as a human, but then also as an investor.
Yeah.
And, in some ways, at some point, I'm sure you've been some format of a founder to some degree.
Yes. Yeah, totally. I'd say, so I'm meeting with about like 5 founders per day, sometimes 10. Like, sometimes it gets really busy. Being able to hear like direct from the source, like sort of what they're building, that's always very important. Like, let's say I'm building a theme in a certain area. So let's say we're doing a lot in the next gen insurance landscape. Like, not only are we going to be talking to founders, but we're going to be talking to brokers. We're going to be talking to large Fortune 500s. We're going to be talking to customers of a lot of these insurance companies. Like, that's how you can start to build sort of a theme, or like almost, if you think about it like a painting or a mosaic, like that's how you start to fill in the pieces by meeting with different sources. And then you can form your own thoughts and opinions from there. And that's what a thesis is. Like, that's how you form it. So yeah, like, I start with founders, and then I always ask at the end of the call, like, who should I talk to? Well, what is something that you learned and where was that from? Or can I meet with one of your customers? And that kind of takes me on this sort of journey to really understand an area.
Right. Highly holistically, it seems.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And to be in a place where you get to kind of piece it together. And again, seeing that as a thematic thing that seems to be happening in your life, right? Like,
Totally.
you do that,
Yeah.
piecing things together,
Yeah.
gleaning knowledge from a lot of different places, and, trying to be well informed. I think people don't even know that they need to be to some degree, because, look at TikTok. There's anybody with an opinion is on there.
Yes, 100%. And I'd say, like, yeah, if Chicago is my mosaic, for my newsletter, like, yeah, I've filled in the gaps by, like, not just meeting with Chicago founders, but Chicago business leaders, Chicago CEOs, Chicago politicians, folks who have left Chicago to understand why. Like, that's how you build a mosaic.
I agree. So let's shift gears a little bit more now that we understand the ecosystem of what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
And not so much even, I wouldn't say it's a narrative to some degree, because you're not telling people that, hey, this is what you do leave it open-ended in some ways. Here's some facts. There you go. I want to talk about more so, because I know you do a lot with AI, and I want to relate it to context. Because as a society, and let's forget founders, let's just think about humans, right? We're here in a place where things are changing so quickly. And with your experience with kind of pulling these things together and finding and digging and providing that information to other people, how can we, like, bring this idea of providing context into our everyday lives? Like, you were talking about LLMs, I'd love to hear about even prompts, right? You're into ChatGPT, oh, okay, what should I make for dinner today? And then just like, stupid stuff shows up that's not even that exciting. Then you're like, oh, what should I make for dinner that I have this XYZ, blah, 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 blah. So I'd love to hear about.
Yeah. Before off air, we were talking about, like, the idea of prompt engineering, and, like, yeah, to your point, like, if you don't give an LLM enough context, like, ask the right question with the right amount of detail, like, it's going to hallucinate. It's not going to give you the answer that you want. All in all, make you, the end user, very upset. I think life is very similar, where, like, we need to be very intentional with how we prompt sort of our information, how we want to find out new things. And what's so great about the time we're living in now, like, the answers are out there and they're waiting to be discovered. Like, you could reach out to anybody today. Nothing's stopping you from having a conversation with anybody. Nothing's stopping you from reading anything, going through, this article, watching this video. All of that information is out there. And I think that, like, we just need to be very intentional with how we want to build out sort of our context. And another important lesson, like, if something's not working, it's okay to unsubscribe. Like, you don't have to stay following, someone that you feel like maybe is toxic, or, like, you're not learning enough from, or, they're not bettering your information diet. Like, it's okay to unfollow. It's okay to unsubscribe. So just almost, like, treat your mind like a sort of context window where, like, you're constantly thinking about new things, you're evolving your thoughts on them, finding new information, and, like, those sources, those trusted sources, give them a trial run. If it doesn't work, you can get rid of it. But that would be my advice.
We were talking before about motivation, keeping focus, etc. You're big on motivation.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot to stay disciplined, even when it comes to, just looking for information. So on a regular day, Landon, when are you just randomly scrolling? I know that everyone's got their job, so when do you make it a point to, are you regimented in the sense that you're finding a specific time to, hey, this is my allotted time that I'm going to now research XYZ. This is when I'm going to work. What is your date? What are your date? Because you're a pretty successful dude.
Yeah,
I'll
I appreciate
say.
that.
I mean,
Still growing.
yeah, I mean, we're all still growing, but you've done a great job of where you are, you know? I mean, what keeps you, because and let's just say what it is, the optics of it, you're very young. And to be, a venture capitalist at your age,
Yeah.
there is something to say about that. So provide that context, please.
Yeah. I try not to scroll, like I think that it's a very dangerous place to be. Just because, these algorithms are built very similar to a slot machine, where like they're giving you little pieces of serotonin, like they want you to stay hooked. That's the whole point. But I'm not perfect, I am human. So of course, there are moments where maybe before bed I'm on Twitter for a little too long, or like, when I can be doing something else, I'm scrolling. So I think how I try and think about it today is like, where are the places that I definitely should not be scrolling? And like I always say, like when I'm walking, like I really want to leave those moments to kind of just reflect. Like it's scientifically proven that like, getting moving, going on a walk is where a lot of people have some of their best thoughts. So like, maybe take a phone call on a walk, or like have a meeting on a walk, or be in silence, listen to music, whatever you want to do. So definitely not scrolling, when I'm just walking through our beautiful city, because that's where I'm trying to think about, what's next? Like, how can I help? What can I do? How can I stay busy? And then another thing that like I've recently picked up is so my girlfriend actually just got me like this air drum set or kit for Christmas. And I used to make music, when I was younger, and like, just
Use music video.
I did. I was directing music videos as well. And just since Christmas, I've been trying to get back into like making beats actually, and like, being more creative.
Wait,
Like,
can't keep going. What kind of music videos?
oh my gosh. I mean, I would do a lot of hip hop videos for, folks that I was going to middle school and high school with. I was in some too. Those are in the deep, dark web, so you won't be able to find it exactly. But yeah, I mean, now just thinking about it, like I worked on a song over the weekend that took, most of my Saturday, and it was nice, like that was time that like I could have been doom scrolling, but I wasn't. I was doing something creative. So same with writing. Like I try and write often. Like, so instead of saying like, just stop scrolling, like find something to replace it with, like find a creative outlet, or something that you're passionate about that can almost be like a positive distraction. We talk a lot about negative distractions, the slot machine of social media. What about positive distractions that you can find?
Yeah, I love that because I think there's a lot of confusion out there. And, sometimes it's very easy to get carried away with certain bits of information. You don't even realize an hour's passed by, in our world.
Yes,
And so awareness seems to be the beginning
totally.
of being able to start to be creative.
Yes.
In our society, and I know creativity keeps coming up over and over and over again, at least the way I understand it and the way that I see it is that when you're using any of these AI agents, tools, or whatnot, they basically are scraping the web of the average of everybody,
Yeah.
basically, and especially even when it comes to music, just because you were talking about it. And I think, I talked to somebody recently about it as well, where what do we own? Right. So if you're about to go and kind of create some music using AI, and if you are it's just only going to give you the average of everybody else's music. Whereas if you really are unique, and you go in there and you are creative, you're going to get something that's completely different because you used your own brain. Right. So, in terms of creativity, that's sometimes they say that that's the antidote, how to keep yourself relevant in a world that is changing in AI. Do you have anything that you think?
Yeah, no, I'll give interesting perspective to that, because I agree with a lot of what you said. But like, if you think about like AI generated music, which like I'm still, kind of on the fence about, we can, well, I mean, so I first think that like there are a lot of different AI tools. When people think about AI generated music, like they're just thinking about AI generated music. But like I do work with a lot of artists. Like I'm friends with a lot of artists. I've invested in, AI music companies, and I do think there are a lot of other elements of like different ways that we can use AI for the musician to almost help sort of their venture. So, if you think about like we have one company, they're in Chicago. What they've done, they help artists find their super fans using data and AI. Where right now, like, an artist, like 20% of their audience accounts for like 80% of their revenue. It's the Pareto principle. Like 20% of their audience, those are the folks that are going to be waiting in line. Those are the folks that are going to be buying their merch. Those are the folks that are going to be like sharing their songs with their friends. But at times it can be difficult to find those artists. So like, or those super fans. So this company has built this algorithm that takes data from different sources, whether it be Shopify, Eventbrite, Instagram, YouTube, and brings it to one centralized platform to help you find your super fans. So there's a whole like ownership angle that I think AI can really help artists with. Or, you know, there's the their company in Chicago. I'll let them tell their own story. But then also, yeah, no, they're great. No, they're amazing. And then there's the whole thing of like the cold start problem. You know, if you're a musician, like sometimes you just don't know how to start, where to start. It could be very helpful to like sort of have that assistant that can kind of, you can talk to, like you can sort of like, you know, go back and forth with ideas on. And to close on this part, like it is interesting because yes, like as you said, like AI, when it's creating music, when it's being creative, it's scraping a lot of different places. But is that not very similar to what humans do as well? Like, you know, if I'm coming up with a song, like I'm inspired by many different sources and like maybe subconsciously, like I'm kind of thinking about a song I heard from a decade ago or like, you know, a sort of place I was at, you know, walking down in the city. And that's going to be sort of put into my prompt in a way in my brain, which then is the output. So yes, I think it's a sensitive topic. But I do think that's interesting perspective for sure.
Yeah, I think people as a whole are kind of confused because they're trying to stay relevant to some degree and taking away the ability to be creative to some degree, especially when it comes to music. You're right. When it comes to, oh, I heard this here, then you add like another layer to it, right? And, you know, at least in terms of like copywriting and whose music is it anyway.
It's a whole nother thing too, yeah.
Even if you're using kind of like an AI agent just a teeny bit, it's questionable. Yeah. So, you know, so how do you feel? Okay, so music is one thing, but just in general, now in the job market, you know, like the workforce, there are a lot of jobs, obviously, that AI is helping create more efficiencies faster. You know, things that are monotonous or whatnot. And there's so much fear. So you seeing these companies that are coming into existence or helping them kind of become like the newest thing, where do you see there is space for humans to actually stay relevant in a world where maybe you're not a founder?
Yeah, it is. It's scary. I mean, just how quickly the world's moving. Like, I completely understand that. I will say, though, I mean, throughout every platform shift, like there have been very similar conversations, you know, whether it's the, you know, Industrial Revolution, you know, looking at the railroads being built here, like there are always new jobs that come up that like we just can't even really comprehend yet because they're not needed yesterday. You know, these are jobs for the future. I will say, though, that like, you know, something I'd love to see from our elected officials, like we do need to do a much better job of AI reskilling and upskilling for sure. I talk to a lot of our elected officials about that. It's something I'm very passionate about. And frankly, it's something that like we do a lot at our, you know, events that we host in the city of Chicago. Like, you know, we're looking for unique ways to sort of make sure that folks are up to date with like where the world's going. They're not caught off guard. They're not surprised. And know that like, again, as I said earlier, all of this information, anything you want to learn is out there. Like you can learn. Sometimes people need to be a little bit pushed. I get that, but like it's really there. Like I was not a data scientist in college, you know, like I had a marketing degree. And I'd say, you know, I'm proud of where I'm at, like where I understand and how I understand this industry. Still a lot to know about and learn. My point is like, it just took me being curious about these different things and different topics. And yeah, to the actual question, I really think efficiencies is sort of like, you know, something I'm looking forward to. Like I meet with a lot of the customers of our products and like, you know, we have one company that they're selling to health systems and they are sort of building AI for claims, specifically helping claims from getting denied. Every time a claim is denied by a hospital system or insurance company, excuse me, but it comes from the hospital system, it's because of like one little typo or maybe one code was incorrect. And these health systems in the back office, like at the end of the day, like they were going through hundreds of pages of documents to make sure that like, okay, like hope this doesn't get denied or, you know, because that's going to be a huge fine for the hospital system. So one of the companies we have here in Chicago is building AI that essentially keeps claims from getting denied to help these hospital systems claim revenue that they need to grow and to serve more patients. So with that in mind, like we're kind of helping these back office folks at these hospital systems, like keeping them from needing to go through these hundreds of pages of documents so they can put their time elsewhere and help serve the patient population much better. So yeah, not every use case is perfect, but I do think that the enterprise is going to evolve. Like a lot of these companies are going to have to evolve with the times and realize that, a lot of the issues that we face in the US and the world, like they're data problems. Yeah. So why would we not want to try and find solutions for them? Or should we still just continue to overpay for lack of care, lack of service? I think we could be made more efficient.
Okay. And in your opinion, do you find that, as what you've seen with politics, bureaucracy, corporations, just holistically looking at it, do you think that there's a little bit of a bottleneck when it comes to integration with AI? I don't
Of
know.
course. Yes. No, I mean, I think that well, politics for sure. I mean, with the political landscape, I mean, yeah, that it's going to take some time.
Why do you think that they haven't gotten more efficient? I mean, AI is making things more efficient. Why is the government not efficient?
Because this is a multi-trillion-dollar company, and like it's very difficult to just kind of completely shift. We saw that.
You mean the government is a multi-trillion?
Yeah,
what you mean?
Yeah, and we saw that with Doge. Like how it was very difficult. Like right idea in mind, but like just very poor execution. Like we need to be very strategic about these moves, and in fact, maybe like don't go top down, like go bottom up. Like I think that's how we can start to like kind of scratch at different inefficiencies. Implement technology in unique ways. And yeah, I think there are a lot of states that are doing it well. Governor Wes Moore has built out, a robust program for working with startups and sort of helping to get more and better technology into, his state of Maryland. So I think that we need to just sort of look at the case studies and look where it's done well. And yeah, all that to say, I think Chicago can do a much better job of, finding ways to be more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the biggest problem, and also, at least from what I see, from based off of your conversations and your interests, and in terms of your newsletter, I mean, there are a lot of siloed sort of spaces.
Yes.
And there needs to be more collaboration between those spaces. Government for sure. Local government is everywhere. I mean, that's a problem. Yeah. I think that just to kind of reel it back in and just in kind of the essence of context, what do you think people can do to kind of, when they're learning about things, learning about problems, yes, those problems are there, but we want to actually look at them to be able to look at it as a whole rather than just this is one piece of segment of information that I have versus not. How do you advise somebody could do that? Yeah.
I mean, so there's the moniker in building a startup, like move fast, break things. And like, again, that's not for every industry though. And I do feel like, if you see a problem, like really do the proper deep dive necessary to understand it. Like answer the questions. There's a very famous quote of the unknown unknowns. What are the things that you don't know that you don't even know about? Like there are the known knowns, like those are the topics that we know very well. Like I'd say that, your favorite food is a known known. And then there are like known unknowns, like there are things that you don't know.
Yes. I don't know that there might be a better tasting.
Exactly. And then there are the unknown knowns, like the things that you just know in your nature, but like maybe you're not talking about them every day. And then there are the unknown unknowns. You do not want unknown unknowns when it comes to running a business, when it comes to, running your life. Like that's why I really do think that do your part to understand the landscape, the ecosystem, whatever problem you want to solve. Like don't just look at it from one angle. Talk to customers, talk to investors, talk to potential hires. Like try and understand the full landscape. And then at that point, you can attack a problem.
Interesting. And I would like to know, as we're now, I have one more question before we go.
Yep.
What can you tell people that are listening in that maybe somebody that might break into being a founder or venture or just trying to educate themselves more about everything. I mean, like just your newsletter is educating in a very unique way, which I think that needs to be, enhanced to some degree. I think that needs to be scaled because it's a new way to think about things where there's so much information and people just don't even know what to do, where to go to make like an informed decision about things.
Totally.
Where do you start? Where are we headed with that? I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I always just say do the work before you have the job. Like before I became an investor, I actually never applied for a role in venture. Like I was out meeting with founders, meeting with other investors, building my own theses, hosting meetups, kind of finding my different methods of sourcing founders. Like I was just doing the work, like I was a make-believe investor in a way, and we spoke a little about manifestation in the episode or in off air. And I do think that like you just got to start doing things. And once you start doing things, opportunities will come your way. So that would be my advice to anybody that like wants to be a founder, wants to be an investor, wants any job possible. Because the workforce is getting much more difficult to break into. And I think that like the more that you can do to build your own relationships before people tell you to do them, build your own brand before someone tells you to do that, build your own knowledge base. The more you can do that, the more opportunities will open up.
Mm-hmm. So being proactive.
Being very proactive, yes.
Where do you think we're headed? What's your prediction for the future? Where are we going with Chicago?
Where are we going with Chicago? Better days ahead, for sure. Yeah, I'd say that, 2027 is going to be a big year. We're going to get some new leadership in the city. And I think that we need to sort of get back to that idea of making no small plans. Like, we need to, first fix a lot of our issues,
Do you think that we have? Are we, in the time that you've been here, do you think that we're doing a good job fixing them?
Yeah, well, I'd say let's look at the crime perspective, I'd say perception tends to lag reality, but like the numbers do show that Chicago is becoming safer. But still, it's not too much to celebrate because, we still have a long ways to go. There's exciting new businesses and industries being built here, whether it's quantum, biotech, but like I want to see Chicago like the go-to place for healthcare or bio or quantum. We need to find a way to recruit even more companies in here. Our population, has declined a little bit. Chicago is not as affordable as it could be. But at the same time, we have like 40,000 vacant lots in the city of Chicago. We need to start building more. Like if I look outside right now, there are only like 5 or 6 cranes in Chicago. Like I think just back to when I moved here, like there were close to 50 or 60. So I think we need someone that is delusional as a leader in a way that's going to really help, build a better future in Chicago. So that's pillar 1. Pillar 2, helping a lot of the issues that we see currently taking place here. The amount of pension debt is not good. Where we're allocating funds, not good. I mean, those are things that I'm concerned about. But we need someone that's, very smart when they think about efficiencies and sort of, finding more opportunities for job growth, and fixing a lot of the issues we have here.
It could be you.
Not in 27, I'd say. Yeah, no, I got my purpose today, but in the future, I'm going to just look for more and more ways to help wherever I can.
I love it.
Yes.
We can all contribute, I think.
Yes.
Well, Landon, thank you so much for being here. I have learned so much.
Thank you.
It is really nice to take a step back and understand there's so many different components that we need to be considering. So
yes. Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.